I miss the sweet Kanye. Chop up the beats, Kanye. Chop up the beats, Kanye. Chop up the beats, Kanye. I gotta say, at that time I like to meet Kanye.
Welcome to Chop Up the Beat, a special edition here on the Bobcast, an audio edition with my friend, best friend of the Bobcast, Anthony Obas.
I go by DJ, the people's DJ, Ant the Rebel. I don't know what Bobby's talking about, but we back here. Good to be back. You know what we do.
You don't got to be that close to the mic. Come on, we're in a studio.
Is this, this shit, you don't have to? Oh, fuck, redo it.
No, we're good. So let's get into it. The Grammys happened this week, and there is no event to break down, criticize, get angry over quite like the Grammys. Every single year it captivates me because we're huge music fans. We get invested in the music we like. We want it to win, and oftentimes it doesn't. We see the pop music win big as it did again this year, but a big deal going into this Grammys was how diverse the nominees were, how irregular the nominees were. We saw almost all of the big four categories filled with minority candidates. Were you excited going in, and how did it fill out your expectations?
I'm very excited to have gone into the Grammys. There still were some things that I had a problem with. It definitely was the structure of it and how, certain people were placed. Definitely, we talk about 24 Karat Magic with Bruno Mars, him being placed in the R&B section has really thrown me off still today. In terms of that, there's still a disrespect to hip-hop as usual. There were certain hip-hop albums that I believe that should have won, especially like 444, that should have won Album of the Year, but it didn't get that, so I'm kind of disappointed in there.
Well, the big four categories were a big deal because you had such a hip-hop presence in there. Album of the Year, Song of the Year, Record of the Year, filled with hip-hop songs. Mm-hmm. And in the end, they didn't win. We saw Bruno Mars take this over, and I'm not adverse to it. I think 24 Karat Magic was a great album. It's short, it's concise, It's almost Michael Jackson-esque in its, sexiness and flavor that it has in it. Bruno Mars has just really evolved as a great performer to me on his music. And I liked a lot of these songs. 24 Karat Magic, that's a catchy track. That's what I like. I actually like that winning Song of the Year.
Mm-hmm. But for me, it's just like I love all the songs. I love all that. But there has to be a way where the people, again, has a chance to have a voice. It seems as though a lot of these songs, especially for a song like, 1-800-273-8255, right? The Logic song, right? Dope song. Don't get me wrong. Dope song. But does that represent the song of the year? Was that the song that everybody was really, bumping to? And I think that's something that we have to talk about again, is the structure of it and how do we go about nominating or voting for a lot of these singles or a lot of these albums.
It was a tough year, and I think that's what made Kendrick Lamar's performance in the rap category so impressive. There was a lot of great hip-hop this year, and he prevailed over everyone with Damn. And how did you feel about Damn? Because it's interesting. When we look back on Kendrick Lamar's career through a Grammy scope, we're really going to look at this year as his most dominant year. I mean, he opens the show with a melody of his songs, his features. This really was the year of the Kendrick Lamar feature, as well as Damn. And he was able to take this over in a way that he didn't quite do with To Pimp a Butterfly. He almost did. He swept those awards, but I don't feel like he took over the show the way he did this year. And, of course, Good Kid, Mad City got snubbed years back. Like, this was really his album that was finally able to take over the show.
Now, the question is, was this a redemption year for him? Was this for him to say, hey, I'm sorry about what happened to Good Kid, Mad City. Okay, we're going to give you Damn. Is that what it is? That's what I was feeling as though it was. Like a song like Loyalty. Loyalty is a great song. It won Best Rap and Sung Performance, definitely. But people will agree to this that maybe Crew with Goldlink should have definitely won it. I mean, man, Goldlink and Shy Lizzy were definitely the combination. The young kids, it's just a combination for people to go off of.
That category captivated me like nothing else, because there was an old format to the rap song category. You think of like a song like "Love the Way You Lie" by Eminem a couple of years back, where you had the clear singer, you had the clear person who handled the hook, and then you had the rap verses in between. I think this category is so interesting now because we've seen rapping and singing fused together so intertwined and interchangeably between artists. I mean, you have one artist on the raps and sung performance category in Problems with Black. You never saw that years back. And even Crew, it seems like more of like a modern mix. And Family Feud, for that matter, too. It wasn't so much Beyonce singing a hook. It was her voice manipulated into the back of the track. These weren't really typical rap sung songs, and it threw me off a little bit in some sense. Like, I don't mind a guy who's both singing and rapping on a track getting into this category, but the Family Feud one, where it's kind of just like a voice run chopped up in the background, kind of like an old Kanye beat.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's rap sung, and like I said, I don't love Loyalty as the winner either. I think this is the category SZA should have won.
And SZA should have won Best New Emerging Artist as well too. I don't know who this girl Elisa Clara is, but she definitely didn't have a presence in music this year that I know of. Her album came out in 2015. First of all, that shouldn't have been in the nomination, right? You had Lil Uzi Vert, you had SZA, you even had Khalid in that category as well too. And these guys really dominated the end of 2016 to the 2017 era with Khalid's American Teen's Dreams, American Dream. Then you had SZA's Control. Like, SZA's Control was definitely the influence for especially teens on our age, and especially like young adults as well too. It was definitely influence. I feel as though SZA got cheated out this award. It's something that we have to go back and talk about as we here on the Bobcast.
It's interesting because I think at the end of the day, we want these Grammys to represent the year in music as we remembered it.
Right.
Khalid had an iconic song in Location, one of the great hits of this year. SZA's album, so good that if you wanted to call it Album of the Year, I wouldn't argue with you. I definitely think it should have been nominated, and ultimately it wasn't, unfortunately. But she had to get some due for how amazing, dominant, influential that album was, even in the R&B field, as you like to talk about. Like, this was a revolutionary album topically. Like, it was just so relevant to people's lives today, what's going on for people of our age group. It was amazing. And then just the performance on top of it. SZA, the way she went from her first album to her second album, just in terms of how big and boisterous and larger than life she was on that album. That album was so good, and she needed some due for it, and she came away empty-handed. Same with Jay Z.
Jay-Z, man. I mean, Jay-Z's been doing this for a long time, but I think for Jay-Z, this is not. I don't think the Grammys was his solidification of what his legacy was, and that's what he talked about again at 444. You know, him getting the Grammys is not against say, hey, this is a check mark, this is what I done. I think him being present there, and the year that he had with 444, him being present, but him being able to voice his opinion on, you know, family structure, on generation of wealth and legacy, which I think that was his biggest goal. Grammys, I don't think Grammys was his biggest thing, but he should have definitely came out with some type of award, as you said just now.
And 444 was iconic. I think in some way you have to find some way to nominate and get a winner out of an album that had such a larger-than-life force on this year. I remember over the summer in July when that album came out, people were breaking it down line by line for days. People were staying up all night. I know I was listening to this album over and over again, the topics and celebrity things that Jay Z touched on in there, his marriage that captivated people for years, and then just going into social critiques and giving advice to the youth, and how concise that album was too, in an age where everyone just wants to put out a million songs because it gets your streams up. It's impressive to see someone dominate with 10 songs on an album the way Jay-Z did.
And I love it how you talk about the albums, because there's certain albums that should have definitely been in the Grammy nomination. We have to talk about Tribe Called Quest. We got it from here. Your favorite album, J. Cole's For Your Eyes Only. I think Joey Badass's All American album should have definitely been it. That's something that was very underrated as an album. Had some great songs. The America song is such a great song. I think those were some of the albums that should have been at least had some type of say in this nomination as well too. But what do you think about that?
It's tough because the Grammys does this every year, so much that I expected, in that they run their nomination chart from 16 and 17, and then the albums that get left off at the end of 2016, so we're talking J. Cole's For Your Eyes Only in December, Sampha's album that came out late in 2016, Joey Badass's was just left out because, you know, the Grammys aren't going to put a album that puts America and KKK in the same line. So
Right.
that was sort of expected. But for a Tribe Called Quest to not get in the hip-hop album of the year category just blows my mind. You know, people didn't like J. Cole's album. It got mixed reviews, whatever. Sampha's album... It's more of a British album than an American album. I'll understand that. There's still a country gap right there. And then Joey Badass's album, of course, had a lot of pointed language that wasn't going to fit well at the Grammys. But Tribe Called Quest, man, the Grammys love tributing legends in the field of music. They did it last year. They had a Tribe Called Quest come and perform We the People with Anderson .Paak and do that medley in tribute to Phife Dawg. They even did more tribute for Phife Dawg with Dave Chappelle in this one.
Yes.
But to not have them there nominated for the album that's going to be their magnum opus, their final run with Phife Dawg mixed in and Q-Tip just sending the group out into the Hall of Fame or wherever they're going to go, to not have them there just because they were released so late last year says to me that the Grammys need to restructure the way they pick songs from a year.
Or even like the deadlines deadlines, because it's just like, you know, I don't know. I remember we got it from here. Came out
such a good album.
Such a great. We had Moving Backwards. We had Comrade Tokyo. We the People as well too. But I remember that album. I could say it came out in November, and that album should have. But Elisa Clara came out in 2015 again. Like, this doesn't make any sense in terms of the deadline and where it should be, you know, rooted in. You know. It's just funny to me, you know. Dave Chappelle always puts a, you know, satire on some of these stuff, you know. And talking about Dave Chappelle's, what did you think about Dave Chappelle's performance?
The way he was mixed into the opening performance by Kendrick, filling the gaps between and just touching on it. The funny thing about this was that James Corden, I get into a kick about it with everyone I talk to because this guy's shtick is sitting in the car singing with famous people, and everyone loves it. Like, all this guy likes to do is sing and dance and perform, and he was so out of his element. He didn't have a car to drive around in. They had other comedians backing him up pretty much. You saw 4 or 5 other comedians, including Dave Chappelle, have little lines throughout this just to back up Corden. So I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe it was CBS trying to boost up his show after Colbert.
Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the situation. I mean, but in terms of comedy, Dave Chappelle bodied this whole year. Definitely check out his little document. It's not even document. His comedy shows on Netflix. Those are pretty funny. Even some of his old shows. I mean, my favorite one was probably the Race Draft. The Race Draft is probably one of the funniest skits. But going back to the music again, how Dave Chappelle and Kendrick Lamar were entailed in terms of the performance was insane.
Yeah, and that's the structure of the show right there. They started it off with the best product, the mix of XXX and the DNA verse, and then going into it was the Rich the Kid feature line. Yeah, and there were just so many great Kendrick moments from this year that was all able to be intertwined perfectly, and that was the moment of the show for me because I think the single greatest thing the Grammys do every year, and they do this consistently, which I give them a ton of credit for, is they're able to mix different artists from different genres and make them collide in such a great way. U2, Kendrick, of course they were on the same track, but they were able to bridge a Kendrick song to the next Kendrick song with their entrance. Everyone loves U2. They come in and get a big response by the crowd with their chorus to that song. That was sensational.
Now, for me, it seems as though you keep saying Kendrick Lamar's performance, but the performance that really stood out to me, there was actually 2, actually. I definitely say Cardi B's Finesse.
Yeah, that's another one where you're colliding genres.
That was a great collaboration as well too. I mean, Cardi B had a phenomenal year. Too bad she didn't pull out with the Bodak Yellow, but she was still able to put on Finesse, which was we combined rap and R&B together into fusing one hit. And we keep forgetting your main man, Childish Gambino.
Oh yes,
that Terrified performance was insane, and it was calm. This is the first time I ever seen Childish Gambino perform, actually, and I was mighty impressed. His vocals are insane, man.
It made you want to go see him at Gov Ball or wherever he's going to be this year. He's not at Gov Ball this year, but he is doing some festivals, I believe. And That album, wow, another
It's different.
Another album that I think was really a landmark album in this year that didn't come away with any Grammys specific. Actually, Redbone, Redbone did win a classical R&B performance award, so it did get recognized, which I'm happy about. That you gotta pay the due to the songs and albums that made a year, and Redbone. The longevity of that track to be on the Billboard 200 for over a year and a half, be a sound out of the 70s that just perfectly embodied that era, but also clicked with people in today's age. Everyone's singing this track all the time. I'll never turn this track on and skip it. It's amazing. The whole album had that feel to it. Concise once again, and we heard a track performed at the Grammys that not a lot of people recognize out of there, but was done well.
Yes, and I think, and I've seen that with I've seen that with Kendrick, and I've seen that with Childish Gambino. There was tracks that weren't highlighted out of their album, and I think this is something I need to start writing, but there was tracks on the album that weren't the biggest or wasn't the most important one that we skipped over probably, that they end up flipping it and making it to an album, to a song where you want to check out. You get what I'm saying? And I was just like, wow. And to be honest, it made me, when the Kendrick performed XXX, I actually went back and I looked through XXX. Even Fear, I really thought he was going to perform Fear, actually, you know, or Duckworth, because Duckworth was one of the most, you know, emotional track out of the album.
The autobiographical element there.
Even there, when Childish Gambino was going to perform, I thought he was going to perform Me and Your Mama. Or he was going to perform...
You'd expect him to perform Redbone. That's the song everyone knows coming in.
But, or I thought he would have done Zombies, because I love Zombies. You know what I'm saying? Not a lot of people like Zombies. But
That's what you were hoping for.
I was hoping for, but it didn't happen. But I like the approach that Kendrick Lamar and even Childish Gambino did, was to take a song that wasn't highlighted in the album and flip it to make people want to go see it, and that's something that I find very great. But there's one person that I didn't throw subs at, and I'm going to call you out as well, too, is Bruno Mars. I don't know. I have a lot of mixed feelings about Bruno Mars, and I still this day.
What is it about his music that you think is not a fit in R&B?
Listen, it's not... I guess I did the research. It's contemporary R&B, where R&B, this day and age, R&B is mixed with pop, and it seems infused. But my thing is, it's not. Maybe I'm getting confused with classical R&B and contemporary R&B. When we say R&B, classical R&B involves a lot of soul. We talk about R. Kelly. We talk about Usher. We're talking about Usher Confessions. We're talking about, you know, Jay Holiday. We're talking about Mario. We're talking about those are classical R&Bs. But when we talk about contemporary R&B, we're looking at a lot of popish, up-tempo, you know, R&B. So we're looking at, like, Neo was probably the first one to actually, bring this contemporary R&B. But
good point.
But it's just, for me, it's just like, I just don't think, when we talk about Bruno Mars, I don't think he embodies R&B, as we call it. I think he embodies the fusion of R&B and pop, which is that contemporary R&B, but I just don't think we can only solidify him in that category as he's the R&B. When we look at Michael Jackson wasn't R&B, he was pop, disco, you know.
Do you think SZA's a better embodiment of R&B? Because she was across this category with songs I love. Supermodel.
The Weeknd.
Yes, The Weeknd was a huge track this year, and she again fell flat in this category because of Bruno Mars.
I think she got underplayed on this one. But again, it's like, where is R&B going to these days? Is it going, which direction is it going to? Like, we say that all the time, but
how about location? How do you feel about that in the R&B category?
Again, it's still that's what I'm saying. People want pop R&B now. They're not wanting the old classical R&B when we had R. Kelly, when we had, the Whitney. We didn't have those people. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't want that anymore. Which is weird to me, because there's not enough classical R&B, but there's a lot of contemporary R&B that everybody loves, because contemporary R&B appeals to multiple genres.
Well,
multiple audiences.
I'm glad you did your research on the 24 Karat Magic, because Jamel Smith keeps telling us that it does fit that R&B bill if you really look into it from a contemporary standard. And it's the same topic with hip-hop that we get into all the time. As electronic music and electronic sounds have really entered the hip-hop sphere, we've kind of lost that original sound in hip-hop in a lot of areas. But it's still hip-hop. It's a sound that evolves over time. You still have people that are going to take a classical approach. But every genre is going to start at its roots, and the people in the roots are going to get angry about it outstretching to the world, but it's always going to happen. And Bruno Mars, a pop artist, was able to use R&B sounds in a popular setting, which gets confusing, as Jamel told me, but makes a lot of sense. This is a guy who was in pop music to start, but has taken the road over toward funk sounds on his last album, and now R&B sounds on this one. 24 Karat Magic was the record of the year, and that's what everyone thinks about when it comes to that album. But there were a lot of smooth, more soulful tracks on this album, like, Versace on the Floor and stuff like that, yeah.
I totally agree with you. I 100% agree with you. But, I mean, there's one category I meant to, there's one category that, we forgot to talk about is the pop. Everybody knew Ed Sheeran was going to win. Like,
no problem with that.
There was no problem with that. If there's I want to touch on a little bit of reggae. I don't know if anybody know, but shout out to Damian Marley, man. He had a great year. That Stony Hill album, it's such a great motivational album. It tells you on how to continue to keep life going and keep pushing yourself. Even with his feature with Jay Z band, man, he really had a strong year. So if you have a chance, check out that Stony Hill. Recommend you checking out Life Continues. And also the struggle continues as well too. And
yeah, there it is. I think that's a good synopsis on the Grammys. I do want to give Sampha credit because he put out a brilliant album on Lost with smooth classical sounds on there, great piano instrumentation by him, a strong, overwhelming voice leading this album. It was one of the more emotional, powerful albums of the year that got forgotten on Grammys Day. I think it was widely acclaimed, got a ton of praise here in America, even though he's a British artist, and he has won many awards over in Britain. I think this could have been the year he crossed over. He would have even been a great Grammys performer because some of these songs were Grammy worth in being, big piano tracks and stuff like that. It was frustrating to not see him there because I think he had such an easy appeal to people in that his album was about loss. Not a lot of hard-hitting topics on there like Joey Badass's album was. Talked about that before, but he's still a guy I'm frustrated about not being there. J. Cole's album, how did you feel about that? Some people loved it, some people hated it. I think it could have fit in the hip-hop category as his last one did.
For Your Eyes Only, again, it's a dope project. I love it. 10 songs. I think one song that stuck out to me is Changes and Neighbors as well too. I think J. Cole, one of the reasons why J. Cole didn't get nomination, and again, I feel as though his audience may have gotten smaller.
That's the logic thing too. May have gotten smaller,
so it affects. And again, this is one factor that I hate about Grammys, which is kind of true. And I remember telling you this. It's sales. It seems as though a lot of these albums that are being nominated are because of high sales, as we look as Culture with Migos. But not to discredit, Migos being in the Culture, not being a great album, not to say that, but it seems as though sales is a factor when it comes to nomination. I don't think that, J. Cole's, For Your Eyes Only compared to Culture made that same equal in sales,
Do you think anyone in the hip-hop category could have competed with Kendrick better than they did?
No. No. And I'm that's a lot of biases in there, but Migos really set the tone in 2017. It was their year to set it off. I don't know how they came. This 2018 they started off wrong, but we're not going to talk about that. We're focusing on the Grammys. But they competed with Kendrick Lamar, Jay Z competed. I'm very surprised that when we talk about best rap performance, that 444 got in that category. I'm very surprised that Big Sean's album, I forgot that I Decided one, was another album that we...
How about Humble taking over off that damn album? It's not my favorite album, or not my favorite track off the album, but it took over this. The music video won Music Video of the Year. It won 2 of the Hip-Hop Awards in the Big 4 in that category. I know you didn't like that song when you first heard it.
I mean, the thing is, again, when... I remember, I'm going back to Drake. When Drake came out with The Model, I didn't like The Model. But this is the power of radio, and this is the power mostly the power of radio. Once you continue to constantly play it, and hear it, you start to gain a like to it. by nature. You just start to get. And for Humble, man, Humble was definitely that catchy song that everybody bumped to. And again, Humble was that song that everybody. That's the thing that we have to realize. Not just one demographic, but everybody was able to bump to.
Yeah. If I was purely looking at these awards through my scope, though, I think DNA was a better performance than Humble on that album. I think people heard that, it wasn't getting the radio play, but people did hear it. It had a great music video, too, that maybe could have been nominated. But Story of OJ, we have talked about this many times. We reviewed 444. For Best Rap Song, a Writer's Award, and Jay Z has been widely recognized as maybe the greatest hip-hop writer ever, up there with Ice Cube and a few others. For that song to not win the Writer Award kills me.
I tell people this.
That second verse on there was the best written verse of the year, I thought.
Oh man, that verse, man, that second verse when he turning 1 to 2, 4 to 8, right? The significance of financial investment, right? People don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear the raw truth of it. And even Jay Z said it on his New York Times article, which was like, you don't want to hear the truth, because if you did, everybody would have been applying the message that he would have been doing,
Yeah.
And Van Jones, so he said the same thing as well, too. If people wanted to hear the truth, they would have been obliging by the truth.
Do you think people slept on 444 at all?
People slept. There's a lot of people who, to this day, who still haven't listened to 444.
Yeah, and you know why? Because they look at this and say, "Oh, I've heard about Jay Z. It's about the drugs. It's about the come up. It's about living on the streets and coming up from the streets and all the money he had." This wasn't that.
It wasn't that.
Topically, I mean, people were really let down by Magna Carta, and then I think they were so asleep on Jay Z, but by the time this came out with the big billboards and everything, people were like, screw that, I've heard what he has to say before. He took a different approach here.
And people keep forgetting, the 444 is not Hove. Hove is not on this project. Hove was the Black Album. Hove was Blueprint. Hove was the Volume 2 Dynasty. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was Hove. This is Jay Z. Jay Z, and you guys should go back and re-listen to the Chop Up the Beat episode where we reviewed 444. But I said that this album is Jay Z's an educator. Again, he's teaching us a lesson.
He's the professor.
He's the professor. Now, my biggest question for you, Bobby, is what do you look forward to this next Grammys?
Next Grammys, we're talking albums that came out late in 2017. You're catching me a little off guard with this one, but I'm going to be looking for this year, see if Kendrick can get back. We're already starting to think about him. The other members of TDE getting involved over there. Schoolboy Q. Schoolboy Q is about to pivot in a different direction, apparently, so we're going to see where he goes there. SZA. I want to see this Grammys be her Kendrick 2012 Grammys, or 2013, whatever year that was, where he lost to Macklemore. That was Macklemore's year where he had the performance. He won all the awards. And now I think she's going to sustain as the artist there. She's going to continue to put out great content, and one day she will have her day. What do you think of her performance?
Oh, SZA, man. SZA, I like SZA's performance, man. I talk about this idea of the performance effect, but SZA's performance is that she continued to embody the values that she was talking about in Control. More specifically about this idea of balance, and I've seen that she had a very balanced approach to her performance. Yeah, I mean, it was nothing.
She's getting better. She used to be a very uncomfortable performer. I thought she did good.
Man, when I seen that Afro punk, she had no direction. Yeah, she had no direction, and this was before Control. But now it seems as though she has a balance and she knows what she wants to say in her performance. And that's what's one of the thing about the performance. You got to know what you want to say.
And she's not a performer per se. I think you saw that on her first album. She didn't really put herself out there as a unique voice. And you see that with a lot of writers. Frank Ocean's first album, the one you love there, Nostalgia Ultra.
That's my favorite, baby.
I don't think he really sets himself apart with a voice on that album. And as time went on, we really start to see him develop that through the last two albums.
Especially Channel 1.
It's cool to see writers who are such a big part of other people's success come up and find their own success. And we're seeing that with SZA now. Great part of the Grammys, because I'm a writer, I like the writing.
For me, a person I'm expecting to do good this upcoming year in terms of the Grammys. I definitely think Drake might be on the
Drake
list.
pulled himself out. Is he ever going to come back to the Grammys? More Life wasn't eligible because he pulled it out.
Yep, I think Drake might be able to do it again. He might be able to do it again. I just don't know how, to be honest, because Drake has that power, it seems as though. Drake is some guy that I'm expecting, and also Kanye West, I'm expecting him to drop something. Kanye West might be a Life of Pablo element, or I really can see a late registration type of album coming out.
It's always going to be different with him. I don't think we're going to go back to any old sounds.
No, but it will always be different. But
too bad No ID didn't win either, because that was another way 444 could have been recognized through the sounds of his production. He produced the whole album. He had a big role on Vic Mensa's album, which I didn't expect to get nominated. Didn't get reviewed very well, but personally that was a favorite of mine. And he produced that Logic track as well, The America.
I told you about Vic Mensa. I told you about the power of Vic Mensa. You didn't believe me, but Vic Mensa came through with that autobiography of Vic Mensa.
And it was all about the sounds.
It's all about the sound. No ID really showed up in those production. People would be like, where's this? And I think also a producer that might be on the 2018 might be Pharrell. Mm-hmm. I could see Pharrell. We didn't see a lot of Timbaland. We didn't also see a lot of Timbaland this year, but we could see Pharrell, Timbaland, even Dr. Dre.
Well, we saw Pharrell put it down on the new Migos album
on the Stir Fry. So we'll see what else is cooking. But I see it's going to be a very prosperous year. If we're looking at improvements in terms of Grammys, we're definitely looking at the structure of it. I definitely think that the people should get more involved in the Grammys. I don't know how, but the people should definitely have a say in it. And which album gets nominated as well too.
I'm giving this Grammys a B-.
You're giving it a B-. That's very light. I'm giving it a C just because of the fact that there is still an underrepresentation of hip hop and rap, and that's my critique on it.
There we have it. Grammys 2018 in the books. We're getting excited for the next one. We'll see what else comes out this year. Stick with Chop Up the Beat. We got a whole crew ready to review the music that's coming out this year in audio and video platforms. And check out the Bobcast. Subscribe on iTunes and get all the special interviews that we're going to be doing this year with people from Syracuse, people from Boston, people from different realms of entertainment and media who are going to be joining us for special interviews here on how they came up and how they found success. And my friend right here, you can find him at Anthony_Obas44, and from there you can find Kicking It with DJ AO, where he also does special interviews with a variety of guests from the music world.
And also shout outs to Voiceless Music, home and independent unsigned. If you're an artist and you want to get down with the get down with all the good stuff, Hitman line, you dig? But shout outs to Bobby. Thank you for having me.
Good night, everybody.